Chris Young.
Thanks very much, Seb. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. So I'll get the plug out of the way first of all. If you want to find out about It Depends, just go on Twitter, go to it_depends_CP, and you can find out all about It Depends, becoming an It Depends certified practitioner. It is easy to achieve, but it's actually very difficult to achieve as well. So I'm here to talk about examples, emotion, and entropy. Now, the reason I've put these things together is because I think they have. The first one, the examples, that's been a core part of my practice for a long time, and it's because of the Cucumber people and the BDD community that I've understood how important that is to making software that works. Emotion and entropy are things that I've really struggled with and really kind of fought against, and kind of like really sort of tried to have as little engagement with as possible. I have a kind of like a sort of, I don't know, I've found difficult. Examples, emotion, entropy. Examples, I find they're fundamental to my practice. They are a real enabler of making stuff that works. The emotion and the entropy, they're things I've actively not engaged with because I've either find them difficult or I don't understand them. And this last year with Cucumber, really all three of those have been part of it, and they've been really fundamental to making the company I work for, which is Linnaeus, I think, succeed better. And certainly made me feel that my practice has improved. So I'm just going to tell you a bit about being a Cucumber customer in the last more or less year. So a bit about Linnaeus, what we do. We take video, we augment it with data, we then allow you to make new videos out of those videos by saying, here's the data, here's some business rules, put them together, and what do you get? So if in this case it's using metadata around bits of news clips to make sort of aggregate news clips on particular subjects. We do that for like sports, we do it for news, various things around that. This is the kind of roadmap of the year with Cucumber, and this is what I'm going to talk about. 4 sort of specific activities we've done with Cucumber, from a summit in Prague through some remote coaching on specification, some facilitation of a workshop in Copenhagen, and then some remote coaching around flow. This is my background. This is why I reached out to Cucumber. Previously, I've had huge success with specification by example, and specifically with the Cucumber toolset. So I've been right at the kind of like using Gherkin and Cucumber together not only makes software that works and you can repeatedly run acceptance tests against, and you can move and refactor at great speed, but this was fantastic getting this commendation from this is the commercial team at the company I was working at, referring to using spec by example, using BDD as elite common sense. It was something that the commercial team understood, the customer understood, and it was really, really great. So I had great experience with this. But I've learned in the past that if I come in with my idea of how things should work, or my kind of toolkit, and say, here you are guys, we're going to do this, it's a recipe for disaster. And all it does is kind of create kind of resentment or unhappiness, because you haven't got any kind of situational awareness. You don't know where you are. So you've got to start by kind of understanding where you are, figuring out where things might be able to be improved, and then working up from that. So my brief to Cucumber, there's some rule about not putting too much text on slides, so I'm sorry I'm breaking that. But my brief to Cucumber was to say, what I see as Cucumber is as both a company and individuals, they understand the intersection of humanity and programming. And it's that, and I really think it was when Sally Ann joined, that was kind of like almost the aha moment for me. It's like, here you are, have a team of people who are all programmers, who all also understand our kind of mess and complexity as humans, and those things together are what makes the kind of Cucumber offering kind of magical for me. So I reached out to Cucumber and said, could you come in and help us? And they said, yeah, sure, we can. So the first thing they did is run a summit for us, a 2-day workshop with all of our engineers. And we started with the silence experiment. It was a really good silence experiment. We are a very non-verbal company for reasons I'll come on to in a minute. And we did the silence experiment, but it was to make a drone, a Lego drone in complete silence. And we did get them flying, and it was a success. The interesting thing about this was that the people who talked the most on calls spent the longest getting their drone to work. The people who were absolutely silent on calls, theirs was working in about a quarter of the time. They were able to silently just work together, get it flying. This guy, he talks 14 to the dozen, and he was just, I don't know, somehow removing the speech bit, it was just not. Anyway, this was great, got all that done. Somehow that's not letting me click onto the next slide. I think it's because it thinks that's got focus. Oh no, that's why, yeah, right. So Cucumber did a fantastic day for us, 2 days for us, lots of organisation, lots of structure. lots of very kind of clear sort of, this is how we're going to use the time, we're going to use it effectively, creating kind of some sort of mandatory sessions, some optional sessions. It was all really like, oh, this is great, this is really going to work well. And then we got hit by a first bit of entropy. It all just started to collapse. Suddenly, like, the structure went away, and there were little groups of intense conversation going on, and kind of things that's like, well, this wasn't what we planned, but it was absolutely what needed to happen. And I remember standing next to Sally Ann and saying, this is amazing, isn't it? It's like, it's almost as if the people taking part in the workshop they've just found their own sort of flow, their own path, and they've figured out what they need this thing to be about and for what they need to happen. And what I thought was magical about that was Tookie and Sal embracing that entropy, embracing that kind of breakdown, and seeing it actually as a way of facilitating things, and harnessing it by, when those kind of sessions started to kind of see like they were petering out, to get everyone who was in a session. So first of all, they went and put little labels above the little sessions that had appeared, saying what they were, so people could decide whether they wanted to join them or not. And then they, at the end, got everyone to do a little debrief about what they'd learned, what they talked about, and that. And then we went back to kind of the sort of track. So that ability to kind of be able to sort of know when you need rigor and when you need to kind of force things in through some kind of constrained way, and when not to, was really fundamental. And I think that kind of modulation for me is really important in the use of tooling around spec by example. So when does it really help to apply the rigor of Gherkin and to bring things into that structured way? When does it actually help to leave things looser and include pictures, or to kind of have a I'm not sure what goes here bit? And that kind of modulation and sort of, I don't quite yet know how to describe it, some kind of engagement with the mess is good. The other great thing that came out of this session, and this is the first sort of bit of emotion, was you've got Sally Ann and Tookie running a fantastic session on how the various bits of the company work together, what the kind of communication flows were, where the bottlenecks were. And surprisingly, what came out of this was actually one slightly surprising thing. This guy here, who's sitting here, who you might think is not engaged at all, he at the end of the summit said, this was the best part of the summit and the bit that he learned the most out of. So the fact that he's sitting over there and not engaged at this point, he was absolutely, we have him on tape saying that. So this session actually led to a realization that I was one of the real bottlenecks in the process, and it actually ended up with a quite sort of heated and emotional exchange between me and another member of the company. And it was, for me, I found it really quite upsetting. I really didn't know what to do in that situation. It was kind of public, and it was emotional, it was embarrassing. And two really good things came out of that. One was that directly after it, Tookie was able to use his amazing sort of skills of sort of empathy and sort of emotional intelligence to take that, but like Rastamouse says, make a bad thing good. And he was able to lift us up out of this sort of upset and say, let's each go around and talk about something really good that you've got out of today. And he immediately sort of lifted the mood and got people to talk about positive things, and it was great. The other really good thing that came out of it is that the guy that I had this altercation with, we now have a much kind of richer discourse. We've almost like we had to go through this kind of emotional kind of like upset in order to be able to talk more frankly with each other and understand each other better. I think our working relationship is still very much a work in progress, but it was a good outcome. So we did the summit. How am I doing time? 5 minutes left. So after the summit, we then went into doing some specification remote coaching, so some coaching on how we could improve our specification. These were the most sort of topmost concerned things people had coming out of the summit, was that we didn't have sufficiently consistent language, there wasn't the right kind of alignment between sales and development, and there was a plea from engineering for sales not to sell impossible things. So looking at that and unpacking that, we thought, well, how can we address this? Well, we can work on the specification. So, and again, I've worked before with Cucumber and put a whole team, including myself, through the BDD deep dive and kind of established practice. I've worked in teams where the practice is already established and it's just running on rails, literally on rails. And but for here, it was a much different approach. These guys are our product manager, and you'll hear from him right at in text form at the end of the talk. We got just some coaching on example mapping. We just started doing example mapping. The amazing thing about example mapping is it's very, very small and it's time limited. It's only 25 minutes. And it was just the little small change that was required to get things going and to address our specification problem. And it was great. This is just a bit of a text exchange. All the slides will be available later. Just a text exchange with Sal and with Tuki's on here somewhere. We had a really piece of trash deployed to production, and when we picked up the charred remains and looked at it and said, what's happened here? It's like, well, there were no tests, and why were there no tests? Because there was no specification. Okay, right. So I then put some quite rigorous guardrails in, and the guardrails were an extra field in Jira saying, here is the link to the example map that where we spent, before we spent hours of expensive developer time on this, we spent 25 minutes of developer and product time just asking some fundamental questions about this. And we're still at this stage, and I was delighted to come into work one day and find that, I work from home, so I don't actually come into work. Miller, who's the guy there, he works in New York, which is why this thing is over here. He had striped these example mapping sessions into the diary and essentially said it's like an open house or a surgery. It's just, I'll be here, you can come to me and we can example map. And he created a Slack channel where people can post what they want to example map about, or he says, this is what I want to example map about. And we do that, and it's great. 2 minutes 30. So that's great. So that's been the sort of improvement to our practice, and that's going along. That's working on our product. There are things with our product that require us to go off and do some sort of quite sort of involved R&D. We're doing a fundamental thing about the way we deliver video over the internet, which needs to change. And for that, we were going to partner with another company. So again, I appealed to Cucumber and said, we're going to kick this off. We're going to do a kick-off session. I would like to have some other voices in the room. I'd like to have some people who know nothing about video in the room. I'd like to have some people who are not involved in our company in the room. And again, a bit of mess for you. This is the sort of go-wide planning that we did with Tuki and Sal to set the thing up. And then Steve came in, and there was more kind of exploration, mess going all over the place. And it then distills down into this, which went into the project charter to say, okay, we think we've got a pretty good idea of what we need to do here, and that then sort of was enough to get sort of executive approval to say, yeah, go ahead and do this project. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is this 1 minute 18, is what we're being coached on now, and this is very much a work in progress. The specification, by improving the specification, we created a really nice bottleneck, because we found that there was a limit to how much specification we could do at any one time. So rather than having features kind of flowing through, going into production, breaking, fix defects, it was ideas come in, go in for specification, and then slow down. And so our delivery rate slowed down, and things started to queue up in specification. And we all stepped back and said, well, how does value actually flow through our system? How do we actually get stuff done? So again, more mess. So we had a sort of vague idea. There's some strategic stuff that comes in, and there's a load of crap that comes in, and there's some specification and some stuff comes out. And we did some remote coaching with Tuki. For a video company, we're extremely video averse. I think I'm the only person who'll turn my camera on. We also do not talk on our calls, apart from the gobby British and American people. Everyone else is completely silent. We use Slack as an indicator of assent, because otherwise you don't know whether it's nothing or something. And I want to just leave you with this, which is what our Miller, our product manager, this is his verdict on this sort of year with Cucumber and the work we've done. I'm just going to leave it up there to read, and I'll shut up. And I'm out of time. So I just want to say thank you very much for having me, and enjoy the next talk.